Hey, Matt.
Hey, Jason.
Do you remember what we were doing back in the summer of 2022? It had to do with Donald Trump and some pretty unusual allegations of document removal at the White House. Here, I'll give you a hint.
His staff used to periodically find wads of printed paper clogging the White House toilets.
Hit it. I'm investigative journalist Jason Leopold. I spend most of my days getting documents from the government.
I'm attorney Matt Topic, and I fight them in court to open their files when they don't want to.
From Bloomberg No Smiling, this is Disclosure, a podcast about prying loose government secrets, the Freedom of Information Act, and the unexpected places that takes us. The toilets, Matt. I can't believe we're still talking about the toilets.
Well, we never stopped talking about somebody allegedly flushing documents down the toilet during Donald Trump's first term. And now that Trump is back in office, the toilets are more important than ever.
And God, Matt, what a journey. What a perfect records journey.
It started with a Zoom call back in August 2022.
Hang on, I'm just searching YouTube.
For toilet noises?
Our producers Sean and Heather were there.
For toilet noises.
Okay.
We should estimate how many presidential records would fit inside the toilet.
We should, Matt. I mean, this is a big deal. Presidents are supposed to save everything.
Yes, by law. And if they're going down the toilet, then they're not going to the National Archives like they're supposed to.
Exactly. This news cycle has moved so quickly, and it wasn't just about the toilets.
Some Trump officials put select documents in so-called burn bags where they were destroyed rather than preserved.
Former President Trump improperly took classified and even top secret documents to his Mar-a-Lago residence in Florida.
Again, these are allegations.
Right. And then what happens? Maggie Haberman, a New York Times reporter, tweets a picture of a toilet that she got from a Trump White House source.
We now have pictures of Trump's toilet with the flushed documents.
I urge people to zoom in. You can see it's a Sharpie. You can see it's his handwriting.
Describe that photo, Matt.
Well, it's a toilet, and I'm looking down into the bowl, and down at the bottom is some ripped up pieces of paper with some all caps Sharpie writing on it. According to a source, this is a White House toilet.
But here's the thing that's like bizarre to me. Like, let's just think about this photo, right? In theory, somebody probably threw many pieces of paper in the toilet bowl, flushed it, and not everything went through, right? They didn't just throw it in the toilet bowl and then walk away. They absolutely flushed it.
If you're one of these people who's taping back together the ripped up things, and you come across the presidential record lying in the toilet, and you have a duty to preserve it, I guess.
No pun intended, right?
So the picture is the preservation of the record. Like that picture should end up in the National Archives.
Oh, that will end up in the National Archives. Absolutely. It's a presidential record. Amazing. In the toilet. I mean, it's got his handwriting on it. That absolutely ends up in the presidential library.
So now all this stuff Trump said before about toilet capacity being too small.
People are flushing toilets 10 times, 15 times. So EPA is looking at that very strongly at my suggestion.
Sinks, showers, and toilets.
Toilets, toilets. We won't talk about toilets.
Toilets, toilets.
And what goes with a sink and a shower?
It all makes just perfect sense.
But Matt, what happened next? Hours after that toilet picture emerged, more big news dropped.
The FBI has executed an unprecedented search warrant at President Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate.
We know the Justice Department has an active investigation into the former president.
You know, a siege of FBI agents on Mar-a-Lago, supposedly related to all of the records that were taken.
So you got to wonder, how many public records have gone down the toilets? What happened to them? Where did they go? Did anyone go looking?
Exactly. I was like, light bulb, gotta FOIA that. So I blanketed all these agencies: Department of Homeland Security, Secret Service, FBI, CIA, NSA, DOJ.
So basically everybody. But what kind of records did you ask for?
Records about either flushing certain documents down the toilet or just records that were brought to Mar-a-Lago, and sort of looking for any kind of communications or discussions, budget records. How many people did they get there to try to piece things back together? So it was a very broad request to all these different agencies. And I got a response from the FBI, and FBI responded with what's known as a GLOMAR. They said that they can neither confirm nor deny, that these records exist. because to do so would be tantamount to acknowledging the existence or non-existence of an investigation. So that was like the first clue that the FBI was investigating this. I reached out to Matt and I said, hey, I want to file some lawsuits. Matt kindly agreed to that. And we sued all of the agencies that I filed requests with, 5 separate lawsuits for all of these records related to bringing documents to Mar-a-Lago.
So these are for records removed from the White House. That would cover allegations of documents flushed, hauled out in bags, or getting taken to Mar-a-Lago.
Right.
So when we file a suit in the complaint, if it gets linked somewhere or it's like embedded in the opening paragraph, that's the only thing you're going to see. So we try to make that kind of punchy. So this one says, plaintiff Jason Leopold brings his Freedom of Information Act suit to force defendants Federal Bureau of Investigation and U.S. Department of Justice to produce documents about any presidential records, including classified records, that were removed from the White House to Mar-a-Lago or flushed down White House toilets, potentially in violation of federal law.
So we file the lawsuits and then we wait and we wait.
But since you couldn't help yourself, I know you didn't stop there.
Yeah. I had this amazing source. She worked in government and she told me that when the news was surfacing about, destroying records and flushing them down the toilet, she gave me this great insight and she told me to hit up GSA, the General Service Administration, and the National Park Service, because the toilet in the Oval Office is sort of overseen by the White House usher's office. If that gets clogged or they need to have someone come out and repair it, that comes from usually GSA. So anyway, I'm just looking at it now. It was a perfect request, Matt. All records of plumbing calls for former President Trump's residence, bathroom, toilet, and the toilet next to the Oval Office, and notes and reports related to those calls. All records of plumbing repairs and fixture replacement, invoices, contracts, photographs. Because if you're sticking paper in the toilet, you would think that it would get clogged. I filed this request, what I thought was this is such a good request. They must have records. I ended up getting this response from GSA, and it says, Mr. Leopold, thank you for taking the time to speak for me today. For issues like a clogged toilet in the Oval Office, it is the usher's office, which is part of the executive office of the president, which would be the ones to handle that type of issue. GSA would potentially have records related to the larger repairs of the toilet in the White House, but the usher's office is the one that conducts the maintenance in the White House residence and therefore would not have records related to any restrooms in that part of the building. So I didn't get any records, but I had no idea about this. So I feel like I got this amazing education on the White House toilet, which I think is a really important thing to have right now.
You're saying if it just needs to be plunged, then the usher's office deals with it. It's a presidential record.
Exactly.
So that's a dead end. You can't FOIA those yet. The Presidential Records Act, that's the law that governs presidential records, which are outside the scope of FOIA, makes you wait 5 years before anything is available. And personally, I think this is ridiculous. The president has an incredible amount of power. We should be allowed to monitor the president and hold the president accountable just as much or even much more than federal agencies. And that if it's bigger, if it's big enough, if it's this is so bad it's in the pipes, they got to come out and rob the whole thing, then it's a GSA. So if they didn't flush enough to make
a GSA, they had no records, man.
So that's it, right?
Hold on a second. We might be on our own to figure this out. So I just went down some rabbit holes with our producers, Heather and Sean. Not everything you flush causes trouble immediately. So we wondered, if you flush a lot of papers and they get past the White House itself, could there be some sort of sign?
Honestly, the reality of there being actual sewage problems because of this is it could check out because there were these big sinkholes, both at the White House and on Mar-a-Lago's lawn. And the theory was that it related to sewage lines.
Oh my God. Wait, is there stories about this?
I'm reading a Forbes article in 2018 that talks about these sinkholes, the sinkhole in the White House lawn. And it says almost precisely a year ago, a massive sinkhole appeared in the front of the Mar-a-Lago resort.
Hold on. Is this a pattern?
Who knows?
We got to look into this. All right. So we went on a little bit of a journey here trying to get more details about whether it was even possible for something like flushing papers to cause a sinkhole. And Sean might be on a watch list now, thanks to a post he made in the Washington, D.C. subreddit.
I just got a terrifying comment on Reddit. A lot of people in this sub are government workers with security clearances, and this very odd and very specific question about the White House sewage system will set off people's suspicious radar.
Sean, stay off Reddit.
I'm deleting it right now. I'm hitting delete. I don't want the FBI showing up at my door. Are you the toilet bomber?
Did you delete it? Because now I think it's even more suspicious.
I thought that the moment after I hit delete too. Okay.
But then, Matt, we finally hit pay dirt.
Imagine like going to Harvard or Stanford and getting, this law degree and becoming a page and going to the White House and somebody handing you a plunger.
This is Patrick Garner.
I mean, it's my living, so I'm not shying away from it, but come on.
He's what you might call a celebrity presidential plumbing expert. He became a media darling during the pandemic and even talked to other media outlets about, well, this subject exactly. What would happen if someone at the White House flushed documents down the toilet? First, we wanted to know what happens when you flush paper down the toilet in general.
It's going to depend on what kind of paper we're talking about. I mean, you can't flush down baby wipes down a toilet without it becoming a major issue. If you start using, printer paper, cardstock, anything like that, you're going to have pretty severe issues pretty soon. It's going to be pretty apparent pretty quickly.
Well, I guess the question remains, will the papers go down the toilet in a normal situation?
It'll go down the toilet more than likely, but it probably won't make it past the trap of the toilet. And if you look on the side of a toilet, you kind of see like an S shape. That's your trap. But especially if you're looking at like something that's called a pressure assisted toilet, which you would find in a lot of commercial applications, very nice houses, those will absolutely do it. In fact, you go to Home Depot or Lowe's tomorrow, you'll see toilets that are advertised that you can flush pool balls down.
Impressive. God bless America.
I love this guy, Patrick, because he's so serious about the work that he does. Let's see what he has to say about what might happen if the Oval Office toilets are able to flush a pool ball and the papers make it down into the pipes of the White House.
It depends on what type of piping we're going to have in the sewer. Originally, there was probably piping that was made out of logs, literally logs. Odds are right now it's PVC, which is standard. It's what you have, what I have, what most people have. Odds are what's happening is it's getting flushed down and it would make it a ways down the line until it either, comes to a belly in the line where the line actually dips and sags a little bit, or maybe it possibly makes a bend. In essence, what will end up happening is it'll almost form like a small net. It only needs to catch a small part of a bend or a fitting that's jutting out slightly, and then it now creates a net and it just starts grabbing waste, foreign objects like paper, feminine projects, anything like that.
Incredible.
Okay.
And you would think, first of all, it's the president. He has a super secret toilet. No, this underscores that the president is just like every other person. He's, it's just a regular toilet, PVC piping.
I'm one of you.
I mean, basically what Patrick is saying is that if you flush these foreign objects down the toilet, it's sort of going to create a traffic jam, right? What could that lead to?
If there is that belly, if there is a bend, if there's a weak spot in the line, you actually have a strong potential of too much pressure building up and forcing a separation in the line. If the line is weak, if it's cast iron piping, which is possible, it could be deteriorating already. So you start having all these objects, start piling up, and all this pressure starts backing up. Eventually something's going to give. It's either going to back up the way it came or it's going to burst the pipe.
Oh, wow.
I know, right?
Okay, so just to recap, here's where we are with the papers in the toilet. Let's say they've cleared the toilet. They've gone through, they've cleared the White House. Now they're out in the yard and they hit a bend in the pipes. There's this big backup and now the pipe's ruptured, right?
Yes, exactly.
And then you have two things that'll happen. Either sewage can start to seep up out of the ground, depending on how deep the pipe is, or it can start settling underneath the pipe and starting to spread out and start actually eroding the soil and the dirt and all the compaction that you have in that area. This isn't just a theory. This is actually a pretty prevalent issue, something that insurance companies look for. In fact, there's been major issues in Chicago, major issues in San Francisco, where sewage lines burst, the compaction's not properly done, maybe it wasn't to grade, and that soil and that dirt starts to erode, and then sinkholes can potentially start to fill.
Matt, sinkholes. In May of 2018, there was a sinkhole on the White House lawn, and it was spreading. And there's more, Matt. We gave Patrick a photo of the White House sinkhole to get his take on it.
I can't definitively say, and I gotta say that, but if you look at it, it's not just forming, a perfect oval or a perfect circle. It almost looks linear, where it's starting to slope downwards. And when you have sewage piping, you have something called grade. You have to have a certain amount of grade when it comes to sewer pipes because it's all gravity fed. The waste must slowly roll downhill. That looks like it's going linear, and it looks like it's going downhill towards a road, which would probably tie into a city sewer, or potentially tie into a city sewer.
Okay, so Matt, this is my theory. This is, I see the reports about sinkholes over the years, including sinkhole at Mar-a-Lago, and pictures of toilet with papers with Trump's handwriting on it. I'm not stating definitively here that papers going down the toilet created that sinkhole in 2018, but that sinkhole was a big deal in 2018. And now Patrick tells us that one way in which that can happen is by flushing papers down the toilet. Come on, man. What do you think about that? That's serious.
Yeah, I mean,
we got to get Patrick. We need Patrick as an expert witness to testify in our FOIA case, to get people down there.
There's no FOIA. I mean, there isn't. This is the problem. The problem is there isn't a FOIA case. At the end of the day, the problem is you, the American public, according to our laws, don't have a right to know whether the president flushed records down the toilet. You don't get to know that. And you also don't get to know whether, if that happened, he caused a sinkhole. Therein lies the problem, Jason. FOIA is great on a lot of things, but when it comes to presidential records, there's a gaping hole.
Well, okay, fair. But what do you think about the fact that he's saying that that this could cause a sinkhole? And that there actually was a sinkhole on the White House lawn?
I mean, we have some solid circumstantial evidence that there was regular flushing of papers down the toilet that led to a sinkhole.
I just want to note, this was in 2018, right?
Yeah.
But there was also another sinkhole in 2019.
Another one?
In 2019, there was another one. And in addition to that, there was also a sinkhole at Mar-a-Lago in 2017.
Oh, wow.
So, Matt, we've made it all the way to the White House lawn, and we think the document flushing could have caused the sinkhole. But remember, there was another part of this document journey. There's a chance the documents made it through the White House pipes and out into DC's municipal sewer system. And we're going to get into that on the other side of the break. Heather, I want to go on a sewer tour.
You really want to go on a sewer tour? So with all this talk of sinkholes and allegedly flushing stuff down the White House toilet, I thought it might be interesting to see if there had ever been any major obstructions in the sewer near the White House. So I made a request with DC Water for reports and investigative records regarding, quote, large obstructions caused by a buildup of non-biodegradable solids in the DC sewers that DC Water dealt with from 2016 to 2023. That timeframe captured the entire Trump administration and the Biden administration, or at least what we had of it so far. And it took a few months, but finally I got more than 900 pages of material in 3 different data sets, which was a lot.
Wow.
So to see what happened where, I built something. Can I get a drum roll?
Double bass drum roll. Whoa. What the?
So you made this?
I made this.
Okay.
You got skills.
Wow.
I love maps. Does someone want to describe what they're seeing?
Well, yeah, this is DC Water Reports 2016 to 2023. And there's a green dot for the White House. So it looks like it's about, I don't know, a couple square miles worth. And then there's a bunch of different colored dots that are kind of scattered all around, like DuPont Circle, Logan Circle, Chinatown. And there's red dots and red squares and blue dots and dark blue dots.
So these are all sewer obstructions reported near the White House.
Yes, that was a perfect explanation. All of these dots, there are different markers on the screen here, and the different colors are for the different terms. So red means that Trump was in office, and light blue means Biden was in office, and dark blue actually represents Obama's final year in office, because I had just a little bit of data from there. One thing to note here, all of the addresses were actually redacted. So unless it's an intersection here, these dots are not exact. They're more like block numbers. What I was able to do.
So they gave you to the 800 block or the 1200 block.
Exactly. So if you go over to the folders where it says Obama, Trump, Biden, you can turn off Obama. You can turn off Biden, you can turn off Trump, so you can isolate each of these groups here. Looking at all this, what I noticed is that most of the incidents in the immediate vicinity of the White House are red.
And who likes wearing red ties?
Let me just say how this breaks down. We have 4 years of incidents from Trump and roughly 4 from non-Trump administrations. I made a second request to get the rest of the Biden years, but as you know, it sometimes takes a long time to get records back.
Right.
But if we're just looking at incidents within a block of the White House grounds, then there are 13 within a block during the Trump years versus 2 from Biden and 2 from Obama. So I just wondered, is it even possible for someone, say, in the Oval Office to cause trouble for their neighbors if they're flushing stuff down the toilet that's not supposed to be flushed? So I called up our friend Patrick Garner again, and here's what he had to say.
Yes, 100%, especially if they're on a combined, which you've illuminated that they are.
What he means there is a combined sewer system, which basically means that to save money, these cities built the same pipes for the stormwater and for waste to travel through instead of like separate pipes, whereas the stormwater and the waste would have their own tubes. And most of the sewer system in this area, specifically around the White House, is on a combined sewer system. So all of the dots that you're seeing on this map are in the combined sewer system, which means that they share the same roadways, essentially. So if there's a blockage from one address, it's definitely causing issues upstream.
Think of it as a slide and a bunch of kids are going down. You block that slide. Everybody that's trying to get into that slide is now backed up and they're going to be affected.
That is such a great visual. Although, can I just say that the children on the slide in my visual are giant pieces of...
Okay, so one thing we don't know is exactly which direction those pipes flow from the White House, or even what the pipes are like now. And you can imagine why the government would want to keep that a bit of a secret. But I did do a ton of research on this, and I found some really useful information thanks to a few nerds who really love tunnels. I found this article from 1934 where this reporter does a sewer tour.
Whoa.
And he traveled through all of the tunnels, which are so crazy.
This is when I'm glad I'm the lawyer and not the reporter. Have fun, buddy.
I found this really old map from the 1890s that actually did have some pretty comprehensive information about the pipes coming out of the White House, down to the size of the pipes and everything. But it's super old. And then I found this better map from the 1980s. And I actually sent some friends on an expedition to the Library of Congress to retrieve it and take some pictures of it. It shows some pipes sort of snaking through that park just south of the White House. So I can't be certain, but what I do know is that the main pumping station that takes all of the sewage to the treatment plant is southeast of the White House. And this stuff is all way more complicated, especially when it rains, but it at least shows a path the sewage could travel.
So where did we leave off with Patrick?
Okay, so one of my questions to him was like, if hypothetically somebody at the White House who's putting stuff down the toilet is causing trouble for their neighbors, how far? Like, are we talking like a block or 2 blocks or further?
So you would have to put down a great deal to be affecting anything past like a block or two, to be honest with you. But you could flush something at the White House, allegedly, whatever, and cross paths like 3 addresses and nobody has an issue, and you're carrying the same waste. And now you're at an address that has, pardon my French, cast iron or Orangeburg or something. And now their pipes are becoming more narrow. So even if it bypasses a couple of addresses, it could still very much be an issue somewhere else. Water and waste travels and can be very, very, very deceptive.
So, for example, if it was, say, a couple of White House documents and like a couple of Big Mac wrappers, and you did that all at once, that could do it.
So in my follow-up call with Patrick, he actually had a question for me.
Out of curiosity, did you see if those dates or corresponded with any current events around that time?
Any major events from the Trump administration?
Oh, interesting. Good sleuthing, Patrick and Heather.
Well, I did look into this, and here's what I found. The first one is May 11, 2017, and that's at 20th Street and G Street Northwest. Does anybody remember what happened in May 2017?
Let me think. Robert Mueller?
Keep going.
Mueller was appointed special counsel.
So on May 9th, 2017, FBI Director James Comey was fired.
Oh.
Comey was fired, and then 2 days later, there's this event.
Oh.
So it just says problem obstructed, cause grease, remedy degreaser.
So not a ton of information there, obviously.
But if you wanted to get rid of documents, that would be a good time, right?
I mean, what we do know is that there was an obstruction, and it's almost on the same block as the White House. 1, 2, 3 blocks to the west.
At that time, and we would have to check the economies in the toilet. No pun intended, Matt.
These next 2 incidents from July 2018, they're both on the same block, which is the 800 block of Connecticut Avenue, just north of the White House North Lawn. And both of these incidents happened both before and after Trump's meeting with Putin at the Helsinki summit. There are a few more of these incidents, but listen, this is all obviously circumstantial.
It's all circumstantial. Yes, Heather, I think this would qualify as circumstantial. Not to be a lawyer or anything, but yes.
It is interesting that these incidents are super close to the White House. And I did ask Patrick about that. And, he basically was like, based off of what you're showing, just that there's a huge increase of events around the White House and then a big drop off during the next president's term. Like, it's not crazy to think that people putting stuff down the toilet is causing a bunch of trouble for their neighbors. And that's his professional opinion as a plumber. I mean, listen, this doesn't prove anything. The flow path may not be what we expect, but it's plausible to think that it does flow in some of the areas that we're seeing on this map here.
Okay. Case closed.
No, case open, Matt.
Case open.
But this is also just the power of the FOIA, is that you can get all of this information in a bunch of different ways. And I was able to visualize it in some way.
Totally. So we have an idea that there may have been some obstructions.
Right. So Sean, our producer, wondered if there might be a way to actually retrieve those documents after they'd been flushed. Since, after all, these are presidential records, and the law does require that they be preserved.
All right, I want to interject for a second because there's a thing called a Fatberg. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this phrase.
No, what is it?
It's essentially where a bunch of sewage kind of congeals into a giant mass in the sewers. My point is, there is a chance that some intrepid spelunkers could find these documents in the sewage system somewhere if you can get to it.
All right, let's play that out a little.
That's amazing, by the way.
Where does the White House flushings, where do they go? They must go into the city of DC's sanitary system.
That's, by the way, guys, I truly think this is a great story and would like to pitch it. This feels like, I don't know, a Nicolas Cage movie.
My question, Jason, then, is if we can figure it out, are you willing to fly to DC with us, put on some very, very tall waders, and go looking for these Fatbergs?
Well, let me just ask this. What would we find? Fatbergs?
Yeah, just giant masses of waste potentially with the paper still in it.
Yeah, but wouldn't the paper have disintegrated by now?
Okay, Jason, please tell me we found some sort of answer at least. Would the paper be there?
Well, we asked our pal Patrick about Fatbergs.
That's a disgusting and also very interesting theory, and probably also a metaphor for our time right now. But I don't know. I mean, it's theoretically possible. I don't know if it would be legible or anything, because at that point everything would be congealing together. Who knows? I mean, that's something that's going to haunt my dreams tonight.
So, not the answer we were looking for from Patrick. But we did find someone with a little more direct knowledge about Fatbergs, and you'll hear from him after the break. Believe it or not, Matt, we have an expert on Fatbergs. I want to say renowned expert who also has one of the greatest names I've come across in a while. Are you ready?
Yeah.
His name is Dr. Love.
I'm sorry. Wait. His name is Dr. Love?
His name is Dr. Love. I'm calling Dr. Love. I'm calling Dr. Love, the Doctor of Love. Do we have to pay for that?
Can we please get Gene Simmons on the pod to talk about... Gene Simmons would probably have some really interesting things to say about this.
Yeah, I bet he would.
I'm John Love. I'm the professor of synthetic biology at the University of Exeter. The main focus of my work is reprogramming bacteria for the development of biofuels to replace the fuels and the chemicals that come from petroleum.
Dr. Love's work studying biomass brought him into contact with a pretty big fatberg in England. In fact, it was about the size of 3 school buses. Local authorities sent out an email to a bunch of folks asking if anyone wanted to do some research on it.
Really, I thought, gosh, everybody will be wanting a piece of this, but it turned out I was the only one.
I think I already see where this is going, which is that one day, potentially, my car could be running on biofuel that was made from presidential records that were flushed down the White House toilet, right?
Sure. Guess my car as well.
And it was super, super interesting because we needed to get samples of the thing. And really, these chaps, they're wearing their clothes. And then on top of that, they've got like a wetsuit or a biohazard suit, essentially. And then on top of that, they have like a spelunking suit they've got respirators and everything. And then because it's almost like as unwieldy as a spacesuit. So they're winched in this manhole. Then they have to use these high-powered lances to degrade the fat. So just sort of, and then get chunks from it.
Oh,
get some chunks from it.
Too much.
Oh yeah. Matt, do you want to know what a fatberg looks like?
That is a hard pass, my friend. I am completely disinterested in the graphic details of what a fatberg looks like. I mean, I can't stop you.
It's not flappy or floppy, but it is crystalline. So it's friable, but it is a bit like, have you ever touched talcum powder rock?
No, get out of here. Come on.
And then, Matt, there's the smell.
It smells awful.
Are we the jerky boys here? What are we doing with the smell of the fatberg?
Okay, well, we can tie it back to the documents. Here's Sean bringing it all full circle with Dr. Love.
One material that we're interested in is just paper, like everyday stationery, particularly if it's fancier stationery that you might find in, say, like an official government office.
Yeah. Are you thinking about Donald Trump stuffing his papers down the toilet?
That he's a quick one, Dr. Love. That's good.
So now that we know a little bit more about fatbergs, and now that Dr. Love knows about why we're asking, let's figure out whether or not papers would disintegrate in this hypothetical document flush fatberg.
Well, if it were covered in fat, it wouldn't necessarily degrade because now it's anaerobic for a start, so there's no oxygen. The paper is made of cellulose, which by its nature is actually quite difficult to digest anyway. This is why it takes a whole season for leaves, for example, to just form mulch. So in these particular conditions, it probably could happen that you might find the paper.
That is remarkable. That would mean then that if presidential records were flushed down the toilet and formed a fatberg, they would remain intact, sufficient that they would still have their documentary value, right? Like you could remove it from the Fatberg and read it, is what it sounds like the answer is.
Well, yes, to an extent, because Dr. Love also describes like what would happen when you pulled it out, what it would look like.
If you're looking for a legible piece of paper, that might be harder because I don't know what would happen to the ink, for example. I know that, for instance, this is my calendar and it's from a jet printer. And if I get this wet, it just all smears and doesn't really work out very well. So that's part of the problem. So you might find, a nice piece of paper with Office of the President of the United States written on it, for example, but just a blur or a smear. So I don't know if you'd be able to find a document that would be legible, but maybe you have. It's almost like we're getting into the X-Files at this point.
Well, please tell me we ask him about permanent marker, because it looks like, the Haberman pictures are paper with permanent marker on it.
Well, he doesn't address specifically what would happen if it was, if the papers were written in permanent marker, but he does sort of address it a bit.
You've got this piece of paper that would be completely impregnated with fat. And I don't know if you've ever dropped olive oil in a piece of paper or just smeared it in butter, it will become translucent. So you might not get the crest or the seal or whatever it is you're looking for, and you probably will not get the type, but you might though. It'd be worth giving it a try.
Oh, hell yeah. Oh, yeah, we're totally doing that. The question would be whether it's reasonably likely that that you could recover any readable material as a result of trying to retrieve any paper from the Fatbergs. And it sounds from Dr. Love like that's probably not likely to be the case.
Let's just state the obvious. Dr. Love knows his Fatbergs, knows what would happen if some papers were lodged inside a Fatberg, and if there was any chance of retrieving it.
Okay, so Heather learned there were a fair number of backups near the White House in the Trump years, and even some sinkholes that could be caused by jammed up pipes. Sean learned that maybe, just maybe, if presidential papers made their way into a Fatberg in the DC sewers, maybe something might have survived in there.
If you're a law enforcement officer interested in making sure presidential records aren't being wrongly disposed, it may be worth asking a few follow-up questions. And that brings us back to our original question, the one we sued over. We wanted to know if the FBI and DOJ had ever investigated whether presidential records had been sent down the toilet. And if so, what they learned. Remember, the FBI said they couldn't confirm or deny the presence of an investigation.
The old Glomar response.
It took literal years, but finally, in February 2025, a judge responded.
Jason obviously couldn't contain himself and called me to talk about it.
Incredible opinion. This is awesome. This is the kind of stuff that we need to get from judges all the time.
If you want to know whether the FBI ever investigated the flushing of presidential records down a White House toilet, we're going to know the answer to that question probably pretty soon.
So what the court is saying is that the FBI can't withhold records based on interference with an ongoing investigation unless there really could be a prosecution at the end of that. And because the Supreme Court ruled that acts undertaken by a president while in office in connection with their broadly defined presidential duties are immune from prosecution, the FBI can't show that this is something that would ever be prosecuted.
Let me just also add one thing just to kind of bring it into the now. Effectively, these criminal investigations against Trump end. But now that Trump is president, this year, there is an investigation into the investigation by Congress over what they say was a politically motivated investigation. So to me, there's so much more of a public interest in these documents because now the investigators are being investigated.
The point is, now that's an open question. And I think anytime you get into a public interest analysis, it's to determine whether the agency's doing its job properly or not. And so when you have all these people, including the president, saying that these agencies have been engaged in illegal weaponization and politicization, well,
you would think then that they would have investigated him for the toilet records, right? And if they didn't, this would actually tell you quite a bit about that question. And how did they go about that investigation? Like, did they do it fairly and objectively, or was it a bogus investigation? Well, how do you tell that? Well, let's look at what they actually did. Right. So, like, we've seen this in some other cases as well. We're going to see more and more traction on that argument, I think. It's like, okay, you're saying that this thing is weaponized and politicized, so now things that maybe in the past you wouldn't be able to get released because it was just sort of like way too speculative or there really wasn't that much public interest in it. Well, now there's a significant public interest in it.
Right. That's your professional opinion. My professional opinion is let's go. This is, to me, one example of us chipping away at that culture of secrecy.
Oh, absolutely.
And the judge agreed.
Yeah. So it's good to see an instance like this where the court is really like doing the proper independent review and concluding that there's no basis to deny from the public knowing even whether there had been any investigation into the flushing of documents down the White House toilet, which is as far as we've gotten so far. Now they're going to see if there are any records. So we will at least know. And if there aren't any, then that's the end of the line on that. And if there are, then, you know, they can attempt to assert some exemptions, and they could potentially assert Trump's privacy, although I would take that case all day long.
So at this point, then, what will the FBI be forced to do?
The parties are directed to submit jointly a status report proposing a schedule to govern future proceedings to conclude this case expeditiously. So they're at a point where they now need to do what they should have done all along, which is gather the records, conduct a reasonable search, review the records, produce everything that's not exempt, and they can withhold whatever they believe is exempt and think they can prove is exempt. You know, she's made clear she wants this to be done expeditiously so we can put the pedal to the metal on like, hey, FBI, you need to process this quickly.
Right on. All right. Victory in the AM. I love it.
Well, Matt, that is our journey, our investigation into not just the destruction of presidential records, but, you know, what happens when these records go down the toilet in the White House? Again, all circumstantial, you know, plausible.
Yeah, I think those were very important findings. And I think it's really important to democracy. I mean, there's an obligation to retain presidential records. So I think what I would want to convey to people is that you and I take the role of documents and transparency in our democracy so seriously that we were willing to exhaust the possibility that somebody's got to go spelunking in a Fatberg to try to extract presidential records so that the public could have access to them. And I think that is what will one day save our failing democracy.
I'm applauding you, Matt. Well said.
Thank you.
Well said. I would like you to close out by saying, you know, you rest your case.
And with that, Your Honor, I rest my case in the People versus White House toilet.
From Bloomberg No Smiling, this is Disclosure. The show is hosted by Matt Topic and me, Jason Leopold. It's produced by Heather Schroering and Sean Cannon for No Smiling. Our editor for Bloomberg is Jeff Grocott. Our executive producers for Bloomberg are Sage Bauman and me, Jason Leopold. And our executive producers for No Smiling are Sean Cannon, Heather Schroering, and Matt Topic. The Disclosure theme song is by Nick, with additional music by Nick and Epidemic Sound. Sound design and mixing is by Sean Cannon. Special thanks to Mark David Corley, John Alexander Leeper, and Jake Skinner. For more transparency news and important document dumps, you can subscribe to my weekly FOIA Files newsletter at bloomberg.com/FOIA Files. That's FOIA Files. To get every episode early on Apple Podcasts, become a Bloomberg.com subscriber today. Check out our special intro offer right now at Bloomberg.com/podcast offer, or click the link in the show notes. You'll also unlock deep reporting, data, and analysis from reporters around the world. We'll see you again next Tuesday